1933?
She
Well,
will be different than me.
starting with
Introduce yourself, Joan.
my name is Joan Levy, and
Look
I'm
right
an
in the
8th
camera.
generation Savanian. And my ancestors came over on the William and Sarah with the 40 other Jews. Their name was, my ancestor's name was Benjamin Sheftel, and they came and formed a congregation of Israel and in Savannah, and their family, they were one of the two Ashkenazic families that came with the Sephardic Jews, and the other family was named Minas, and they made a big difference in Savannah, not only helping organize the congregation and sometimes having the services in their house, but they became a vital part of the community. Benjamin's son Mordecai and his half-brother Levi Sheftel were merchants and shippers, and Mordecai fought in the Revolution along with his son Sheftel were captured by the British, brought to Sunbury, then the island of Antigua, and traded back later for British prisoners. They were dumped in Philadelphia and had to work their way back to Savannah, and then rejoined the fight against the king, even though they had signed a promise that they would never raise arms against King George III of England. Anyway, growing up, I grew up with the land grants from King George to my ancestors, not realizing, and my mother has Sheftel's cocked hat, and I never realized how important these items were. I was aware of them, but I didn't realize their real importance in the history of Savannah and of this country. So I left for college and didn't come back for 28 years, realizing that I really needed to get back to my roots and my family and where I came from.
All right, so you meet this dashing young man, and he is not 8th generation Savanian. So first of all, if you would tell us how you met, and then tell me your parents' reaction to bring home a boy that's not a Savannah boy. All right, so Gary, do you want to?
How did we meet?
Tell us a little of your background first.
My background is I'm a product of the Jews store, and my mother's family were from came over originally from Germany, and they settled around St. Louis, Missouri, and eventually my grandfather family migrated to Little Rock, Arkansas, and they don't know how they got there, but they came to Little Rock, and they were merchants. They had stores in North Little Rock where the railroad was prominent. They were railroad yards, and like everything else in this world, they had a small store. It became a department store, and they thrived there in North Little Rock. And they were very prominent in the temple in North Little Rock. The rabbi there being, I think his name was Saunders, and my father's side of the family, my grandmother came over from Warsaw, Poland, and her family were bakers, and her brother came to Memphis, Tennessee, where I was born, and they opened a bakery, and they sold bakery products. It was called, believe it or not, Bambi Bakery, and they lived above the bakery on High Street in Memphis, Tennessee, and that was, as a kid, I can remember the wonderful smells of the bread being baked at night and all morning, and eating the hot bread and butter and what have you. But my grandmother came over from Poland with her family. It was two brothers. One had a confectionery bakery. I say that because they did cookies and pies and apple turnovers and that type of thing. The other brother was more commercial with white bread, and whatever we call it, cotton bread in the South. And my grandmother, she was I don't remember how old she was, but she was in her teens, and she was given a pack on her back, and she went out in the Mississippi Delta as a woman, and she sold probably needles and threads and cooking implements and notions, whatever she sold, that's what she did at a very young age. So they settled around Memphis, Tennessee. She met, or was a arranged marriage with my grandfather, who I'd never met. His name was Joe Levy, and he was from Russia, somewhere in Russia. And if you ask these people in Russia where they're from, they'll all tell you Odessa. And the reason they tell you Odessa is that's where they sailed out of to come to New York, or wherever they came from. There was an important experiment that was done. Instead of bringing people to New York, they brought people to Galveston, and it was called the Galveston experiment, and you can look it up in history. And there's a family here, Joan's relatives, it's Teresa and Herbert Victor, and their family came to Savannah from that Galveston experiment. And I would think that a lot of people who settled maybe in Memphis and who settled in Chicago probably came from that Galveston experiment. But my grandfather, somehow I don't know where they met, but they were married, and my dad was born probably above a store in Crenshaw, Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta. And I was born in Memphis, was raised in a small town in Arkansas, in which I grew up. There was about 5 Jewish families there, and we were carted off to Hebrew school or to Sunday school about 30 miles from Memphis. And I was raised as a young Jewish boy in the largest synagogue in the world at that time. And everybody in here again, when I said about people looking at the Jews in the South as not really being Jews, but somehow got there. They didn't come from New York and lived in ghettos or what have you there. But we were raised in the South. Family much as you would probably see in some of the sitcoms with what's the one with the kid running around? He became a great director. What is the name?
Oh, Andy Taylor show.
What was it called?
It was Mayberry.
Yeah, whatever the Mayberry played. And I was raised very much like that.
Andy Griffith Show.
Andy Griffith, yeah.
What was it?
Andy Griffith.
Andy Griffith Show, okay, whatever it was called. And like that, and like a little town like Killing a Mockingbird in that town, or what have you.
West Memphis, Arkansas.
No, it was not West Memphis,
wasn't?
Arkansas. It was Hughes, Arkansas. Hughes. And it was 30 miles from Memphis. My wife seems to know everything, but she does not. And we grew up in this town, and we had friends, and I had a lot of Gentile friends, and I still have some of those friends today. I grew up and when I was 9 years old, we moved to Memphis, And we moved to Memphis because my sister was, 3 years older than myself, and my dad wanted to move to Memphis, was a larger Jewish population, and she could assimilate, and she could be with the other Jewish girls in Memphis, and she didn't have to date the glam of Arkansas, the whatever. And anyhow, we moved to Memphis. My dad was on the board of Barrenhurst Synagogue, the largest Jewish organization probably in the world at the time, 2,000 families they had. And it was on Valentine Avenue in Memphis. And he was on the board for some 40, 47, 48 years until he passed away. And I knew Elvis, so, what else? Elvis used to come to my house and he judged dancing lessons. Came with his best friend, Wink Martindale. Wink Martindale went on to be a talk show host in L.A. His good friend was a DJ in Memphis, and trying to think of his name, but it was Jerry. He's still around Memphis, and we were all caught up in that rock and roll era with Dewey Phillips and Sam Phillips, and the Sun Record Company, and all that stuff. And I don't know what your question was.
How did we meet?
How did you meet?
Okay, how did we meet? Okay. I graduated. I was an athlete in high school. I wasn't gifted with a lot of what can I say? I had born with a hearing defect, and until I was discharged from the Army, nobody knew I had a hearing defect. They thought I was, as they say, tongue-tied, and I couldn't understand. But the problem was, I could not hear people. I could not enunciate, because what I heard was not what they were saying. As a result, my parents, when I was a little kid and we lived in a little town in Arkansas, and some of the Jewish salesmen would come along, and they would spend the night at our house as our guests, because we were all Jewish, and that's what you do. And my sister, I would entertain them, and she would get on a piano, and she would play Sioux City Sue, pronouncing my S's like T's, and so everybody loved me. Toot, titty, toot. And so, and so they liked Mr. Toot, titty, toot over here. But I had what can I say, a hard time with language. But I graduated University of Tennessee in 1965, and I was going into the Army because I was an ROTC guy, and I was commissioned. And of course, I failed my physicals because I could not hear, and I also broken 5 cervical vertebrae playing football in high school, and that kept me out of the Army. So I came back to Memphis and West Memphis, and I worked for my parents for about 2.5 years. It really didn't work out because I wanted to do other things, and they wanted me to run the store, and I really wasn't a merchant. It's something that I did all my life, and I worked every day after high school, and I worked Christmas and whatever. But anyhow, making a long story short, I got an appointment to work as a junior executive trainee at Riches in Atlanta, Georgia. And I moved to Atlanta, and I worked at Riches. And I became an assistant buyer, and I became a manager of the second floor over children's wear and what have you at the great downtown store. And one day I was taking some copy upstairs to where the copywriters were, and I saw this gorgeous redhead girl, and I just fell in love right then. And I got my copywriter, was this little gay guy, really nice guy, but happened to be the best friend of this woman over here, this gorgeous redhead. And he introduced us, and she thought I was Joe Namath, and she fell in love with me. So anyhow, but I knew Joe Namath too. What the hell? I do not look like Joe Namath. That's how we met. We met at Rich's department store. And I bounced around Atlanta for about 3 years, and I opened a boutique. Wexner Brothers was a very high-end fashion boutique, mainly focused on shoes, and then on couturier dresses, and got it. Diane von Furstenberg. We had name some of the dresses. It was great lines. We had Sonia Raquel, or who else? We had a whole. It was a wonderful boutique. It was a great years, early '70s, and the economy was fantastic. And I had later took a job. '73, I went to a large ladies department store. It was all over the South. We had 32 stores called Gus Myers, and we had stores in Philadelphia, Berkeley, California. It was 32 stores, starting in New Orleans, where we had 7 stores. And I was later transferred to New Orleans, which we stayed there for 20 years.
Excuse me, you left out, we got married in Israel in 1970.
So back up, and
Well, what do you want me to do?
you fall in love. So why don't you tell me how
Did we
did
fall
this?
in love? Is that what we did?
How did this? Well, you were
We
head over
got married
heels.
in a fever.
So you introduced this handsome gentleman to your parents, but he's not a Savannaian. How did all of that play out? Did they
Well,
have any
actually,
problem with that?
They happened to be in Europe at the time all this was going on. And I wrote them, and we talked back and forth, and I said, this is the one. This is the first really nice guy. He is.
Thank you.
Well, it's true.
That is true.
Or it was true. Anyway, and I said, we're in love. And he asked me to marry him.
On
And-
the first or second date, huh?
Yeah, it was the second date,
Which
but
you thought
anyway.
was nuts.
Yeah, he asked me to marry him, and I said, you're crazy, you don't even know me. But eventually he got to know me. And actually, I sort of turned him down, and it was only a couple of months later that I said, you asked me to marry you once. Were you serious? And that was in September, and we got married in January. So I don't think we got married, and we met in July. So I don't think we got married in too much of a fever because we took our time.
Yeah, we were at the right time. We were 27 years old.
So let's talk about, and I don't do this with anyone else, but you have such a history with this community. So tell me about growing up at Mikveh Israel, life cycle events at Mikveh Israel, including confirmation, and then getting married at Mikveh Israel, and what that was like. I mean,
It was very meaningful.
Was it really to
Yes,
you growing
it
up?
was.
You
It was.
understood what this
Yes.
all meant? So tell us.
I really understood. But I would like to mention something. I don't know whether you want to hear this or not. But growing up in Savannah, as a member of the Reformed congregation, the different synagogues did not mix then. And I still don't know a great many people from B.B. Jacob, or I know more from the AA. But still, I wasn't aware of my Jewishness as opposed to the rest of the world, which was Gentile, because the Gentiles were part of my world. I went to public school. I knew people from ballet class that were Jewish, and of course from Sunday school and all that. But I felt more a part of the Savannah community than I did part of the Savannah Jewish community, at least in grammar school and even through high school. My closest friends were Jewish, were in my confirmation class, but still, I dated boys who weren't Jewish. My parents weren't upset about that, which, if I'd belonged to a different congregation, I probably, it would have been different. So, I still don't know a lot of the Jewish community.
So your growing up really did not center around the JEA.
No, it didn't.
Did you ever come here? How were you treated? Were you treated as an outsider?
No, I wasn't
Or
treated
was
as an
it just you
outsider. I
didn't
even
feel-
belonged to to the B'nai B'rith girls at one point. But TYG was much more of a draw. That was the temple thing. I just never grew up around the JEA. I didn't belong to the Girl Scouts there. I belonged to Girl Scout Troop 57 that met at God,
Wesley Monument?
not Wesley, on Washington Avenue.
Washington Presbyterian, First
Yeah,
Presbyterian.
First Presbyterian. Anyway, and it's just, it was very different from many people's growing up in Savannah Jewish experience.
Did you ever feel ostracized by other Jews?
Yes.
Or did you
Yes.
feel anti-Semitism?
Both.
So tell me about that experience.
Well, my first experience with anti-Semitism was strange. I was in the first grade at Charles Ellis, and I went home with a little girl by the name of Cherry Jones, who was from Millen, Georgia, not Jewish. And when we were talking at her house, she said to me, I know you're Jewish, but my mother said that it's okay for me to play with you because you're the right kind of Jewish. I had no idea what she meant.
Can I say something about that?
I don't know if you want that in there.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's really something. What does that mean, the right kind of Jewish?
I'm not sure what she had in mind. I really don't know. But I didn't understand. I went home and asked my mother what she meant because I just didn't understand.
I can explain what she meant is my background is very different than Joan's in that I grew up Orthodox and there's a temple, a large Jewish population in Memphis. Like I said, the Orthodox had over 2,000 families. It was the Reform temple, probably had close to 1,000. It was a huge temple. Growing up Orthodox, we treated the Reform people like they were Christian, like a church, and they treated us like we were, I don't know, we were low class Jews or something, immigrants, and we did not mix, and it was that way in the South for many a generation. And what my wife was saying about the way she grew up, and she grew up in a very German-oriented Reformed society in which they had a Harmony Club, they had which is a Jewish club, Reform club primarily. They socialized with the other Germanic Reformed Jews. They looked down their nose at European people that came over here in the 1800s, early 1900s. This building is called the JEA. It is called, and it stands for the Jewish Education Alliance. There was one here, probably started, and there's one in Atlanta, Georgia. And they probably started to assimilate the immigrants coming over from Europe into the society, to the Christian society that we have here.
And my great grandfather was one of the first. I think he was the first president.
Yeah, he was on the board, started this place. But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying was there's a big schism, animosity between Jews when there shouldn't have been. Hitler didn't ask you going to the gas chamber if you were Reformed, Conservative, or Orthodox. He annihilated you. He didn't care. But the German Jew, which my grandmother was a part of, just thought they were better than everybody else. And the same thing with I hate to say it, but it's true with Joan's family and the Reform movement during the 1840s, 60s, 70s, into maybe the present day, because people are trying to bring that back, and it's in disguise as being the classical Reform Judaism, which is being battled around and what have you, because other people have assimilated into the Reform movement. And you can go in a Reform synagogue today, you can wear a kippah, yarmulke, you can wear a tallis, you can wear anything you want. Back in the days of the early 1900s, in the 18, you didn't do that. You didn't wear a hat. You just didn't do it.
My grandfather wore a hat.
Your grandfather did, but they did not speak or use Hebrew. They even had a movement of having services on Sundays instead of Saturdays. They tried to assimilate so much into their movement. I forgot what the question was, but
Well, let me go back just a minute and stop.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you think that the Reform movement tried to fit in with their Christian neighbors to erase anti-Semitism, or because they were trying to change Judaism itself because it no longer was relevant? Do you have an idea about that? And then I'm going to hit you with
you're
that.
asking Joan, or you're asking
No, I'm
me?
asking you.
Well, you're asking me, and I wasn't raised Reform, so I can't really answer that, give you a definitive answer. All I can say is experience that I grew up with in Memphis. And at one time I was dating a girl who was Reformed, very wealthy, very well-to-do family and what have you. And my family was very well-to-do also. But they broke us up before we got too serious, because I guess they didn't want to have me or my family as their family. The same thing applies to my beautiful wife and her family. They would have much rather have Miss Joan marry somebody from Christ Church than to marry me. And she said, oh, well, but I can tell you that after we were married, her family had little or nothing to do with my family in Memphis, and that was not something that I had done or they had done. They just had their own Reform, German, Jewish friends, and that's who they associated with.
So actually, the question I was going to ask you is, so you make this announcement, this pronouncement, your parents are aware that you're going to marry this young man, and their reaction to who his people were, their Makatenistas, who they're going to now be related to, was that cause of concern for them? And what was the discussion like?
If it was, they never expressed it to me. It was only kind of later on that they were sort of standoffish. I think they were very cordial during the time of the wedding. I think they tried to.
I couldn't tell you. I don't remember the time of the wedding. It was a happy occasion for me, and put it this way, I had my family were raised during the Depression. My father dropped out of school to go to work to earn a living for his family. My mother, they had a department store, they were very wealthy and everything, but they didn't have enough money to send her to college, and I think she taught at a business school somewhere. They had to work, they had to scrape. My wife's family, on the other hand, came from money. They came from family that had large department stores, and they were wealthy enough to send my wife's mother to Smith College in Massachusetts, and they were in my father-in-law's family. They were wealthy enough to send my father-in-law to the University of Virginia and to Harvard Law School. So these people saw things differently than Max and Sigma Levy of West Memphis, Arkansas, and Memphis, who had to work for a living and knew, my mother used to say, I wouldn't even spend a nickel for a Coca-Cola because I was raised during the Depression, where Joan's mother and father would take grandiose tours to France and to go to some of the finest restaurants in the world, stay at the Ritz, and things like that. So yeah, it was a culture shock, I think. But we got married.
Was there kosher food at your wedding? And how did?
No.
If not, so how did
With
your
what?
No,
At your
no,
wedding.
But his family didn't keep kosher. They
Your-
were Orthodox,
Well,
but they didn't
my
keep
family,
kosher.
we were, to answer your question, I was the product of the Jew store. We lived in a small town in Arkansas. We made our money when I hate to say the word, but I'll say it, cotton pickers came to town to spend their money. They lived on plantations around Arkansas. They weren't plantations like you see with tar and going with the wind, but they were plantations. They had a company store, they had straw bosses, and they picked cotton in these big bags they carried behind them. And they had, I think, $1 a bag or something. I don't know, maybe $3. But go ahead.
So basically,
We're
Your
two different
family-
cultures.
your family might have been Orthodox, but what you're saying is that they adapted to their surroundings in
Yeah,
order to
they had to
survive.
live, they had to
So
live,
things
right.
like keeping kosher or rituals that were
We
not
did, we had
easy
rituals.
to
we
do.
We had Pesach, we had Pesach, we had services. We had like 5 Jewish families in the town we lived in, so we had a place in Arkansas. And I can remember people down the street named Weiss, and they had a store, and we had Passover services, and I can remember lounging on cushions and whatever, eating matzah and doing the thing. I mean, I must have been 5 or 6 years old or what have you. And then being Orthodox, of course we did all
So
those things.
is it
But
harder?
we had ham at home, and I had a black mammy who raised me, and I probably had a wet nurse. I don't know. I was raised Southern, you know. I loved turnip greens and collards and cornbread.
And my family felt, and still does feel, I think, that they were very observant Jews, but in a completely different way. Every Friday night, we would have Sabbath dinner, alternating.
Then we have ham.
Yes. Alternating between my grandmother, Mildred Abrams, Guggenheimer Abrams Kerr, and my father's mother, Gina Levy. Every other Friday night, we would go to their house for dinner, and afterwards would go to temple that started at 8:15. And Saturday morning services too. I mean, they were and still are very observant. So, and we of course had Passover, and we had the holidays and all too. So it was a different brand, but I don't think they were any less observant.
Well,
All right.
Yeah.
So in Judaism, we're taught, both in the Bible and the Talmud, and about the quality of a person's name. The ethics that goes along with Judaism is carried in your name, always to have a good name. Well, you have the same name, so tell me a little about the name Levy, and tell me what is, in your understanding, is there additional responsibility because your last name is Levy, and in Jewish tradition, somehow you are among the priestly tribes. So tell us about your names.
Well, I'll start.
Go ahead.
I'm a Levy. I was born a Levy, and
Me too, though.
but I really do not know much about the priestly tribe other than we administered to the Kohans, to the Cohens. Being a docent at Mikveh Israel, I was talking to a gentleman from up east, and he was saying about every year it's a tradition in their shul that the Levites wash the Cohen's feet. And they do that before our holidays, okay? And I'm saying, wow, that's... And then I met a young rabbi from Miami when he was here with our new Torah at Mikveh Israel. And we were writing a letter in the Torah, and he was a young rabbi, probably his early 30s, from Miami, Orthodox. And he let me write a whole word because I was a Levite. Okay. And but he also told me, he said, you know what the Levites did? And I said, yeah, they ministered to the priest. And he said, they were the choir. And I said, what do you mean? He said, they sang, they were the choir. And, back when they had the temple and what have you. And, but yeah, being a Levite, when I was raised in Methodist Orthodox, we really didn't have any kind of priestly duties. We would, I remember at Holy Days, the Kohens they would go up and have the grand, Aliyah, in which they would have the big tallis, whatever you call the large ones, and they would all bend over, and they would chant whatever they would chant. I think it was numbers or what have you. And they would do that, and nobody was supposed to look at them. We did have to turn and look away. And
It's called duchening.
and I can remember being Orthodox. The bema was in the middle of the shul, and that's where you read the Torah from, and it's where the cantor chanted from. In Mikveh Israel, they call it bema the pulpit, which is, to me, is not correct. But there's a lot of things that were hard for me to understand with the Reform. Being a young married person and coming to services at Mikveh Israel, I didn't understand a lot of things that were happening. I could see where they took maybe doing an outline of Judaism and taking the things they thought were important and including these into a service and adding music and taking traditions out and throwing them right out the window and taking really the man or the masculine part of Judaism out of Judaism and be it something for everybody in a Reform thing. And a lot of things I just could not understand. The main rhythms and the main services were there, but to me, the warmth and the mysticism, if you'd say that, of being a Jew, was just taken out, just thrown away. And to this day, I do not feel. The only time I really feel that I am with God or with a spirit is probably doing a memorial service and doing somewhere in Yom Kippur. I don't feel it going an hour on Saturday morning or Friday night. I don't feel that way. It's
So-
an irrelevant type of thing.
So a lot of what I'm talking to people has to do with compromises that Jews have to make to live in a non-Jewish world.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that there are so many compromises that the two of you have made to
We're
live
really
in your house.
We're really a very mixed
Yeah,
marriage.
we're mixed- we're
and we
mixed
joke
marriage,
about
right.
it, but it's true.
It's true.
So what is the thing that makes you one? What is the thing that unifies you about who you are as a Jewish
Well,
couple?
I, as a Jewish couple, that's a very interesting question. As a Jewish couple, we raised our children Jewish, and they went to Sunday school. They did the whole thing, but my God, when it came to having my child bar mitzvah, her family wouldn't hear of it. And
Maybe we assumed.
So therefore, and, you're asking this question, and I'm just telling you that I had a very, very, very hard time raising my children Jewish and keeping my Jewish identity, married to this lady and being in with her family. What they, you know, it's like anybody else in this world. It's like a hard shell Baptist. Jesus did this, and this is the way it is, and it's written here, and we're going to do it our way. So therefore, don't talk to me about compromise or anything. And it was the kind of same thing being with Joan these years. Her family were Reformed Jews that did it their way. Her father is even, he devoted his life to an organization that was established. He was one of the main members. It was called the American Council for Judaism. And that saying to be a member of that organization, you had to say that I'm a U.S. citizen first. I'm an American. Secondly, I'm of the Jewish faith. And that's what they saw. That's how they believed. Her brother has become a leader in the same organization, although he's changed it, and the name has become the Society for Classical Reform Judaism. And they have taken Israel in, whereas her father's organization did not recognize Israel. Her brother's organization does recognize Israel. And what they are doing is trying to get the academic world, being through the different, I think there's 5 rabbinical schools now, the Reform movement, trying to get the scholars to start teaching or to teach Reform Judaism as a class in these schools, and try to open it up in the Reform movement as more of a classical Reform Judaism. Whereas I think in the last few years, people have become Reform as a convenience type of thing. And as more and more Jewish men are marrying outside of religion, and also the women, and they're being Jews by being Reformed Jews.
All right, so I'm going to address you solely. I want you to comment, but I also am interested in, so you're the woman of the household, and religion is carried by the mother. How did you instill in your children that they were Jewish?
By observance. I think, by example, I was on the board of our temple in New Orleans when they were growing up, and I have been served here, and I've tried to be active in that way, but also observance of the Shabbat and the holidays. I don't want to make light of this particular subject, but I wanted to bring out something here when we're talking about Southern Jews that impressed both Gary and me, and it has nothing to do with what we've been talking about. There is the Southern Museum of, help me, Gary, Jewish
In Jackson, Mississippi.
in Jackson, Mississippi.
Run by a distant cousin of ours, Macy Hart.
Macy Hart. And they did a video about the Jews in Mississippi during integration, those integration years that I was living in New York. I mean, we weren't particularly participating in.
A lot of my relatives
But-
are in the video that live in Mississippi to this day.
And what it brought out, and is just, it's something that is not generally known, but we can understand and relate to, is the Jewish folks in the Delta, in Mississippi and Alabama and Arkansas, Tennessee, they were, and this was true to some extent in Savannah too. They were mostly in retailing, and the folks from up north would come down and lobby with the blacks. And because these folks that were in retailing,
This we're
their
doing every day.
livelihood was at stake. if they had come out for integration, they would have lost their way of life, they would have lost a means of making a living. And it was, it came down to, their lives. And I think a lot of people from the North don't understand that. This was brought out in this film. You've probably seen it. But it's hard to explain to people who come down here.
So do you feel somehow that you're oppressed because you're Southern more so than you're Jews?
No.
No.
Do you ever feel like
But
people, they look their noses down at you because you're Southerners?
No,
Yeah, I
they
do.
just don't understand us.
No, I really do. I do.
You do?
Yeah, I do. I do. I was taught, I was raised and I was taught to be a gentle person and to honor the father and our mother. And not until I was 20-something years old did I find out that somebody was not my aunt or my uncle. And I was taught to be very, what is the right word? Chivalrous? I don't know. I opened doors for people, yes or no,
Right.
sir. I was being very polite. I somewhat sat in the background, and I was the be seen and not heard type of thing. And I was raised to be a very polite person, and I reflected on this a lot. And what Joan is saying about his videos, I felt that, and like I said, I'm reading a book right now by what is her name, Marcy Ferris. They didn't write it. I think they reviewed it, and what's his name? Greenberg. I think his name was Greenberg.
Mark?
No, Mark or Martin Green. I'm not sure. It's not your husband or whatever. I might be related to you. And they were reviewing this book, which I bought at the. I told you before, at the Jewish Museum in Atlanta, and it gives a very, very slanted view on the Jews of the South, like I was saying. And what it is trying to push down everybody's throat is that the Jewish experience was that of the Jews in the East Side and the ghettos of New York, and of being in the ghettos and shuttles of Europe, and not of the Jews in the South. And they don't think of the Jews in the South. People come down here, and they say, there's Jews in the South? I mean, they don't understand that. They say, well, how can you speak Hebrew with a Southern accent? They don't understand that, and they don't respect us, where I was raised to respect everybody. And you coming down, you're having a battle with these people who are trying to jam their flavor of Judaism down your throat.
All right, so let me end this
20 minutes.
with the following, is that as Jews, we believe strongly in tradition. Certainly you have generations of it, more so than certainly I do. Of those traditions, what is it that you hope you've imparted to your children? What is the gem, what is the essence of Judaism that you hope that you've given to the next generation and the generations that follow? And I'll take a response from each of you.
That's a toughie.
No, I think it's very, very, very simple. I think what I tried to bring forth in that Judaism is more or less the golden rule: do unto others as you have to do to you. And God, what was I'm trying to think of his name. The Jewish prophet, not a prophet.
Maimonides?
Yeah, Maimonides or whatever. Not Maimonides. It was
Hillel?
Yeah, Hillel. It's what he was preaching, and I think that's what we can import that into our children's mind and treat people as equals. That, I think, is the essence of it, and that's what I've tried to do. It didn't get to them through the learning of Hebrew, but doing rituals. And I mean, they did the rituals, and I think as a intellectual part of life to get through to them that it was life is about, is to be to live a good life and to respect yourself and to respect others.
I don't think I have anything to add to it, except that there's like a Jewish soul, and I don't know how else to explain it, that I think it's important to consider, and that's something that Gary is particularly, he has a Jewish soul, and I'd like to think that I did, but I don't know if I do.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Very
Now,
interesting.
was that different in a lot of people?
Well, it was
Everybody's
certainly
different.
different.